Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to compare the differences between the Legendary Rudy and the Legendary Plus Rudy and talk about which one is better, which one would probably be better for your team, and what the differences between the two of them are. I'm going to start with the Legendary Plus Rudy. Just a quick overview of his skills. He has a shield similar to the Legendary version that, when his ultimate charges, he gives a shield to your whole party. It's a pretty good shield, but both of them have it, so it doesn't really stand out too much from the other. It's slight differences because he also does give Link to everybody, so it decreases the amount of damage received for 15 seconds as well. His second skill is a shield only for himself, and it also gives him a little bit of reduced damage for 25 seconds and reflects the decreased damage back to the enemy. The other two skills are actually what sets him apart, in my opinion. But you have to look at some numbers to really understand why these skills are so good. And I didn't understand when I was actually, reading the skills. I was like, oh, these are lackluster. But when I started seeing it in practice, I realized how good these skills really are. And unless you might, like, if you see this video and see the examples that I'm using, you might then come to appreciate these numbers like I did. So first of all, I'm going to just read it out. So this skill teleports the target, and then it does AoE damage to everybody, and it's based off of both attack and defense. And this skill is similar. It again charges at the target, and then it does some damage to all enemies. That's based off of attack and defense, and it also has a chance of taunting the enemies as well. His passive is also interesting because it decreases the debuff duration by about 20% at level 14. This is good for certain scenarios, but usually it's not enough. Like, for example, if you're looking at burn duration from the Chapter 1 boss, reducing it by 20% is still not enough for you to prevent getting killed by it. So it's good for especially PvP scenarios where you're getting stunned for 6 seconds, and then reduce that by 20 seconds, that 1.5 second gap or something, that might actually turn the tide. Whereas if you're stunning the enemies and the enemies are stunning you, and your stuns go off, you get unstunned 1.5 seconds earlier, that might be enough for you to win the battle. So this becomes a good PvP skill, but not really great for PvE. Now I'm going to talk about these two skills and tell you why it's, in my opinion, so good. So this is actually a setup that you should be using. You should use an all defense set, and the items should also be enhanced. What I did here, actually, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend going plus 20 for a non-radiant gear. It should actually just be plus 10, but mistakes were made, and I have this, so I'm using it. But really, he's not even at his full potential because, for weapons, people have, plus 20 weapons already. But generally speaking, people don't have plus 20 versions of armors. So the defense you see here is actually going to be even higher when you have the proper setup on him. But this is, in my opinion, a good base to start with. You have about 3,300 defense, and the skill modifiers that come with this one. Sorry, let me get back. The skill modifiers that come with these skills are twice the amount of the regular attack. Like, for example, if I look at Eileen, who is known for AoE skills, she has 410% of attack to all enemies in an area, and that's consistent with all her skills, 410%. Now this guy, for his skills, he has the 410% attack, but you expect him to have lower attack. So in addition to the 410% attack, he also has 820% of defense as damage. And that's where a lot of his damage potential actually comes from. He does surprising damage for a tank. I will show you some numbers, and you might be amazed, because I was amazed when I saw this, and I was like, wow, this guy does a ton of damage. So I'm going to show you in a second. But if you compare, right, with a full attack set, I don't want to put a crit set on her because crit is going to offset some of the calculations of it. You might get a lot more luckier with crit. So to make a fair comparison, I decided to put an attack set on Eileen. She has about 9,500 attack, and Rudy instead has about 6,000 attack, and he has 3,300 defense. So if you multiply the defense by 2, because that's what the modifier does, it's like twice as much as the attack. So you can say he has 6,000 damage, 6,600 damage coming from attack, and 6,600 damage coming from defense. And then you add them up, it's like 12,000 Yeah, like a 12,000 modifier, right? Whereas Eileen only gets a 9,000 modifier. So now, instead of talking more about this, let's just look at it in practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the field exploration. I'm only going to put Rudy there so that you can see how much damage he does. And this is the setup I'm using. And then I am going to let you see how much damage he's going to do. Now he's getting a plus 10% defense from the slot that he's in, but Eileen's going to get a plus 10% attack from the pet that I'm using. He gives plus 7% attack. But take a look. So he does about 3,000, 30,000 damage, right? With his first skill, it was crits, 30,000 damage again. And then, the first two skills is really what it is. Like his normal attacks is going to do a lot lower damage, but his like skill attacks, it does quite a bit of damage. It's about 30,000 damage with crit. Now let's take a look at Aileen's damage as well. And you saw the amount of attack that she had. The modifiers are pretty constant because, as I said, he is getting plus 10% from the slot that he is in. As you can see, the front line gets 10%. So instead, I'm going to give Eileen plus 11% from the pet that I'm using, plus 7% attack. And let's take a look at how much damage that she's going to do. So he did about 30k damage with the setup that I had on him. Now Eileen does about, let's take a look, and hopefully she crits as well. So she does 24,000 damage. So he does a lot more damage than Eileen, which is insane because Eileen is known for how much damage she does, right? But with her other skills, she does do more damage. She has 3 attack skills, and she actually has a skill that she can chain as well, so it does twice the amount of damage. I'm just gonna finish this out and then get out of here. But yeah, when I saw that, I was so surprised at the amount of damage that he does, and a lot of people actually misunderstand the damage potential, in my opinion. Like, I've seen people showing screenshots of the arena match with Rudy, and then there's like 50% of damage coming from Rudy, and people are like, hey, you know what? That's probably the reflect damage, right? Like the amount of damage that's reflected is probably what's causing such a high number. And to test this, I actually used Evan for my for some of my arena matches because he has a passive that also reflects similar amount of damage, right? But his the amount of damage that he does is very, very low. Like, it's usually less than 10%, even with a reflect that's always there. So Rudy's damage is not coming from his reflect, it's actually coming from his skill. Like, he probably does some damage from the reflect, but I don't think it's a significant amount of damage compared to his actual skills. So why you would use Rudy? So in PvP, first of all, he has a pretty good debuff. He has a pretty good passive that reduces debuff. Secondly, he's a very tanky kind of unit. He's built as a tank. He's probably going to be built as very high defense and high HP. But for being as tanky as he is, and also having, pretty good shield, some reflection, he also does a significant amount of damage and taunt. So this, in my opinion, is really what sets him apart from the other Rudy. The other Rudy is actually very good as well for PvP, but he is actually, in my opinion, even more. He's usable in a lot more teams. There are a lot of setups that you can use with him to really take advantage of his skill set. But the Legendary Plus Rudy, it's his damage potential that really sets him apart. And taunt is a pretty crazy debuff itself. It's not only going to make them attack you, but it's also going to make them stop using skills. So you have a taunt for 5.7 seconds. It's like an AoE taunt. You can use him in an AoE party, which is kind of what I'm using. Like, these are the 4 units that I'm using right now in arena. And obviously Eileen has AoE CC, Ming has AoE CC, and he also has AoE CC, and all 3 of them do a lot of damage. A lot of the times in my arena fights, his damage is usually at least 25% of overall damage. Sometimes it even goes as high as like 50% of damage because he is able to last long in the fight, and he's able to dish out a lot of damage as well. To really take advantage of him, you really want to have an immortal set on him and a revive set. If you are earlier in the game, like you don't have properly built out Rudy Plus yet, you're actually going to find that he's struggling in arena because he's going to charge at the enemy right away. And if you don't have his defenses and HP built out, he's going to die. He's not going to be able to do much damage before he dies. So he really shines once you get a revive set and a what's it called? A revive and a immortal set, giving him like immortal for like 6 seconds or something. I think what is it, 6 seconds? Yeah, 6 seconds. So that's when he really starts to shine. But even when you start to get his defenses up, and even without like those two accessories, as long as you get his defense up, he will start to perform in arena. Um, you can also pair him with the legendary Rudy as well to increase his own defense, because legendary Rudy, his passive increases the whole party's defense by 14% at level 15. So you can use that as well to boost his defense up even more and make sure he is in a formation which gives him increased defense. You basically want to increase his defense as much as possible. So that's Legendary Plus Rudy. He's not a bad unit at all, and more people are slowly starting to switch over to him in Arena, especially at the top ranks. But I still see a significant number of people using the Legendary Rudy as well. So now I'm going to get into Legendary Rudy, and for a lot of PvE cases, he's actually better. So not only does he provide a shield that is similar to the Legendary Plus version, the shield is a little bit different. Instead, it removes debuffs. It doesn't cause the link that the shield does, but instead he has a link skill with his with his first skill. It increases the block rate of all allies by about 50% for 15 seconds, and also gives the link effect that the first Rudy, the Legendary Plus Rudy, gives. And the reason that he is better in a lot of PvE scenarios, especially for things like the 8-man Salos raid, is because of this skill. You're not always able to get off the shield, because maybe you just, in the 8-man Salos, maybe he just cast a skill and you needed everybody to survive, so use the shield, and now he's going to use his ultimate, and so when he teleports, he's going to use a massive knockback damage attack, and you know that your squishy units are not going to be able to survive. Well, thankfully, you can also use this skill, and this doesn't need an ultimate charger. It's another skill to have, right? So he basically has two different skills that reduce the cooldown. Sorry, not cooldown. That reduce the amount of damage your party takes. The party-wide ability. It's not only for himself, like the Legendary Plus Rudy's shield is only for himself. So in a lot of cases for PvE, this is better, because you have two different ways of mitigating damage, and they're on two different sets of cooldowns. So if you are, if you're playing as the tank role in your raid, you can use him, and manually, like you turn off your ultimate, turn off your skills. You can manually select to use this skill and manually select to use the ultimate to make sure that he is able to use those at points where you need the party to survive, because the boss is doing some kind of crazy attack. Now his other skills aren't that great for PvE. For PvP, it becomes decent. Well, let me really talk about what kind of comps he will shine in. Really, where he shines in PvP is actually just this one skill, the Link of Trust. It does two things. The first thing is, as soon as the battle starts, he's going to start using it. He's not going to run towards the enemy. He's going to kind of like take a step or two, or maybe even stand still and use the skill. And it's on everybody. So one of the reasons why it's good is because everyone, when Arena starts, everyone rushes forward except for Rudy. He stays still. So imagine you have a party where everybody is like, like Delins, Miss Velvet or something. They all have a charge attack and he's staying back. Typically, enemies usually target the tank, unless they have like something specific, like Delins who's targeting the support role or something. Usually they all target the tank. So everybody is going to rush towards him. Like say, an enemy Fodina, Aline Fodina is going to rush towards him and use her AoE skill, but he is kind of separate from the party. The rest of your party has already gone ahead, so he has a little bit of distance between everybody, which helps to mitigate some damage, because it has, it's created distance between you and the rest of your party. And sometimes they might have also charged ahead, such that straight line AoEs and things like that might miss the rest of your party. It might only catch Rudy. So it's just a way of damage mitigation, just by creating distance between everyone else in your party and Rudy. And the second reason why this skill is so good is when you pair it with other units that have Immortal as their ability. And I'm obviously talking about Spike, because he's the most common unit that uses Immortal as a passive. So why this is so good with Rudy is because as soon as the battle starts, he's going to use the skill. So everybody gets a buff. If you're fighting against a Claire, the Claire will want to remove your buffs. And typically, people come up with Claire. People use Claire because that remove buff she only removes buffs when buffs are cast. She's not going to randomly use it. But because you're using the skill, it's basically like luring Claire to use the the buff removal skill, so that when Spikes pops off his immortal, she will not be able to remove it. So it's a good way to use him, just to get rid of these units that are removing buffs. Keep them in your team alongside units like Chris Plus and Spike, and even units that are using immortal accessories, because basically you're already getting the enemy to remove a buff by using Rudy's skill, such that whenever your immortal procs, whenever your passives that cause immortal, all of those things proc, they don't have an option to remove it. I mean, if they have two or more options, yes, they will still be able to remove it by using a second unit that removes all buffs. But you're at least able to remove one buff by using Rudy's skill. So I hope you kind of understand the differences between these two. I think Rudy, the legendary Rudy, is typically better for PvE, because especially for like high raid scenarios where you need more than one skill to kind of make sure your party survives. I think he's much better for that, and I think he's also more usable in parties for PvP, because he really shines with Spike, that is very common in Arena right now. So he's really able to help with those teams. He's also able to help with teams that are using what's it called, like the immortal accessories, maybe even the mirage accessories. The mirage accessories look like this, which also provides immortality if the enemy gets if I get debuffed. So he's able to pair well with units that use things like that, whereas this Rudy, he's better for like he's actually similar to a Fodina. He's just a more bulky, tanky version of Fodina, but he does a lot of damage. He does as much damage. If basically, to be fair, I'm just gonna say he does as much damage as Fodina. If you look at his damage numbers, his ratios, that really shines. If you want to do even more tests, you can. But basically, I'm not joking. Like, take a look at well-built Rudies in Arena and see how much damage they do, and then you'll be surprised at the amount of damage that shows up on the end screen, as long as the Rudy is really decently built out. If the Rudy has, like, say, 2,000 defense or something, he's probably not going to do a lot of damage. You really need to pump up his defense. You have to make sure you're using formations that increases defense, maybe even pets that increases defense if you're really want to take care of Rudy, but you might be better off using a different pet than just one that increases defense. Like, you might want to use a crit pet, or one that removes debuffs or something like that. Something else is better. But really, to see his damage potential, you really have to increase his defense. And as I mentioned, a lot of people are not at that stage yet. They don't have Radiant gear that they have enhanced to +20. So that is going to be a huge difference. Just to give you an idea of how much that difference is, like a +10 non-radiant armor piece is going to give 235 defense. A +20 piece gives you 424 defense, right? That's already quite huge, because I mean, defense numbers are not as high as attack. So and remember, this is a +800 modifier, right? So that just like 200 extra defense on both pieces, so about 400 more defense that I'm missing, is going to be a lot, right? And also, as people start working on their codex and start to increase their like defensive buffs and HP buffs, he's going to be a monster. He's going to do a lot of damage, and he's going to be really, really tanky as well. So to summarize, both of these are good. I think Rudy is better at PvE. And I think he's better when you're starting off in PvP. Like, if you don't have a well built out team, if you don't have the best gears, I think Rudy is probably better and easier to take advantage of in Arena. However, when you start getting to the higher end in terms of your gear and your investments, and getting out Rudy's potential, his defense potential to 15, and so on and so on, then he really starts to he really starts to shine in Arena, and at that point he will start to outclass the legendary version of Rudy as well. And just to make sure I don't miss this fact, I just want to let you know that the potential for both of these are also maxed out. I have 15 attack in Fodina and 15 defense in the legendary Plus Rudy. So I just wanted to point that out, just to make sure that I didn't miss that. Because when I was doing damage tests, I wanted to let you guys know that both of these were comparable. They had similar investments in gears, and yeah, this was my conclusion. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you understand the differences between them. A lot of you have now started to get Cosette Plus already from, being lucky and so on and so on. So you're thinking of your second Legendary Plus unit. So I wanted to give you this video to help you guys realize and see, the differences between the two, and also to help you realize if you really want to get that Legendary Plus Rudy or not. So I hope this video helped. If you guys have other questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll do my best to help you guys out. And I will see you guys next time. Take care now.